For 8 years, I had anorexia. Starting my senior year of high school until a year ago, my thoughts and behaviors revolved around restriction, denial, control. It hurts to think of everything I could have done with people I loved if I hadn't so firmly believed I did not deserve to eat. I made excuses to get out of dinners and drinks with friends, even when that meant ending up alone at home. But it hurts more to think about what would have happened if I'd continued that way. They say with an eating disorder, you either recover or die. Around my senior year of college, the strangest thing began to happen. I would wake up in the night and eat. I was awake for these episodes, but not completely conscious. Later, I'd wake up and remember with dread what I'd consumed in the night. It was like my body had taken over. It was hungry, and it was claiming what I had forbidden it for 8 long years. I often lived with roommates, and if I hadn't stocked up on satisfying food like bread, cheese, chocolate, and especially peanut butter, I would eat food that didn't belong to me. I was powerless to stop. Afterward, I felt so ashamed. My self-worth depended on my willpower, especially when it came to food. I felt barbaric, and I hated that I was such a sneak. I had to do something. So I did. I pretended it wasn't happening. That worked for a while, but soon my roommates grew confused about why their peanut butter or cheese or bread vanished in the night. They never suspected me because during the day I barely touched food at all. About 2 years ago, I lived with a couple of good friends and one roommate I didn't know. After a month of living with me, she taped her name to everything she bought. She was polite at first. She sent an email to all of us. Did anyone accidentally mistake my Jiffy for theirs? No big deal. When it kept happening, she emailed, someone is eating my food. This is not okay. I felt so bad that after a while, I knew I definitely couldn't say anything. One day, she caught me in the hallway of the apartment and asked me to my face if I'd eaten her food. She was so sincere and seemed genuinely concerned, almost as though she were inviting me to confess, as though she just might forgive me. So finally, like the adult that I am, I looked her right in the eyes and just straight denied it. One morning, in my half-asleep, ravenous state, I went into the kitchen and I opened the freezer. In the freezer, what you're really looking for is ice cream. I knew no one had any ice cream. If they had, I would have already eaten it. But when you're repressing 8 years of hunger, nothing, frozen or not, is safe. Hide your snacks, hide your canned goods, hide your small pets. So I reached deep into the freezer and found something in a pie dish covered in plastic wrap. I pulled it out. I peeked inside at some kind of chocolatey cake-like substance. It didn't look as rich as, say, chocolate cream pie. It just looked nutty. I set it on the counter. There was already a knife frozen inside the dish. I cut myself a tiny piece. I remember this detail because once I tasted it, I was glad I hadn't cut a bigger slice. It tasted sort of like pie and sort of like something else I couldn't place, something weird. I wrapped it up and put it back. Afterward, I went for a run. When I got home, I hopped in the shower. When I got out and wiped the steam from the mirror, I was surprised by my reflection. My eyes were red and squinty, and I looked exhausted. All of a sudden, I was blown away by the simple concept of a mirror. The notion of having a reflection at all was like just crazy trippy, you know? It wasn't until I was standing in the kitchen making coffee that I felt abruptly lightheaded. The room was spinning. I gripped the counter for support. At the same time, I had a strange, overwhelming impulse to laugh. That's when I realized what I was feeling. I took my phone from my pocket to text my other roommate. I wrote, is there by any chance anything in the freezer that happens to contain weed? I lowered myself to the floor and waited. After what felt like hours, I got a text back. It read, fuck. I spent the day in bed. I tried to sleep, but was convinced the airways to my nose and mouth would close off if I lay down. I tried to watch TV to distract myself, but even the Gilmore Girls became a horror film. I called my roommate back to ask if it was possible to die of a weed overdose. He didn't know. I'd always hated being high because it made me lose control of the rigid routines I clung to around my work, my social life, and especially around food. But that day, I realized that it wasn't the high I was so afraid of. Being high and losing control wasn't nearly as terrifying as how out of control I felt all the time, stone cold sober, about food. That day spent high in bed made me realize how badly I needed help. I Googled and found a specialist in cognitive behavioral therapy and eating disorders. I met her a week later. She made me include peanut butter in my diet. She sat with me while I ate. I learned in the last year how anorexia is a disease of control. I learned how to give my body what it needs without guilt. I learned that my willpower is not who I am. In the end, I had to lose all control to gain control. Thank you.